There's nothing like hopping into your car and driving around with your buds, seeing the sights, trying new foods, and fighting monsters. If that's something you're into, then you might like Square Enix's most recent game and the most notable JRPG series in history, Final Fantasy XV. Originally released in November 2016 for consoles, the game recently saw a release on PC after a long cycle of porting by a tag team of Square Enix and Nvidia. This port saw new graphical enhancements thanks to an upgraded game engine and came up to date with all the DLC. Seeing as this is Square Enix month, I thought it would be only natural to check out one of their most recent and most noteworthy releases. Roll down the windows and savor the wind in your hair. We're driving towards this review of Final Fantasy XV. Final Fantasy XV takes place in the world of Eos and follows Noctis, Crown Prince of Lucius, and the playable character you're with the most as he prepares to travel to an arranged marriage. Following him on his journey are three other characters, Gladiolus, Ignis, and Prompto. Each of them acts to advise and assist Noctis and will be with you for nearly the entirety of the game. Events early in the game forces Noctis to delay his marriage and seek out the royal arms, powerful magical weapons wielded by past kings, in order to have the power to reclaim his throne. These weapons are extraordinarily powerful, but drain your HP as you use them, so it's very risk and reward. Much of the game consists of two things: traveling to quests and missions, and combat. The game's primary vehicle is called the Regalia, and you can customize how the car looks, down to the colors of the interior and the outside paint. Later on, you'll acquire the ability to ride Chocobo for a small fee, which is something you should prioritize when it becomes an option, because Chocobo are a much more enjoyable way to travel short distances compared to simply running from place to place. Like the Regalia, you can customize your Chocobo all the way down to colors and special equipment to enhance their performance. Unlike the Regalia, Chocobo level up, becoming faster and having greater stamina. For longer trips, you'll want the Regalia, but otherwise your Chocobo will quickly become your go-to. A fun little extra to the game is the ability to change the attire of the four protagonists. You start out with several pieces thanks to DLC, and each outfit confers some sort of special bonus, from stat boost to limited invulnerability. However you decide to choose what the protagonists wear, be it looks or functionality, each outfit looks great. Well, except for the goofier looking outfits, which only dull the seriousness of the game's events. Still, they're there if you're the kind of person who loves that sort of thing. As for combat, Final Fantasy XV has an action-based, real-time battle system they refer to as the Active Cross Battle System. This system shucks the traditional turn-based systems of previous Final Fantasy titles in favor of a more free-form battling experience. There's a lot of similarities here to how combat in Kingdom Hearts plays out, so if you're a fan of that series, you'll find the transition to this game's combat to be fairly smooth. There's also a wait mode for people who prefer to strategize before taking action, but the Active Cross Battle system is absolutely the way to go and clearly how the developers intended you to play. It's still nice to have options though. While Ignis, Prompto, and Gladiolus can only equip a few weapons, Noctis is able to equip up to 4 weapons, which you can switch on the fly with the D-pad and controllers. Some weapons are better for certain situations, so being able to have a variety at your command is a great change of pace from the norm. Even better, Noctis can equip every weapon type in the game, allowing for even greater diversity. There's some pretty sweet weapons in this game, and a big part of the early game is experimenting with weapon types until you find the 4 you want to stick with. Combat in Final Fantasy XV is one of its strongest suits, and there's many ways to approach it. You can start by using a powerful spell against a group of enemies and then run in to clean up the stragglers. Or you can warp to a higher point and then warp strike an enemy for massive damage. When attacking enemies from behind or the side, you'll often link up with one of the AI for a powerful team attack. As battles are drawn out, a green tech bar will fill up, allowing you to command the others in your group to perform specific attacks. If they have tech attacks you don't like, there's more to equip using the Ascension Grid. The Ascension Grid is sort of like a very basic version of the Final Fantasy X Sphere Grid system. You'll gain ability points, usually referred to as AP, as you level up and complete fights. The Ascension Grid is split up into several skill trees and are sorted by type. One tree focuses on magic, while another focuses on stats. Yet another allows you to increase Noctis' combat prowess, while another focuses on the AI and increasing their ability in battle. It takes a while to unlock everything, but the game at least gives you the choice of what to focus on. Speaking of magic, Noctis is capable of elemancy, a technique where he can absorb elemental energy from special nodes, usually found around campsites, that can be transformed into elemental bombs of various strength. How powerful these spells are depends on how much elemental energy you put into the spell, and if you use an item in it. I usually mixed monster parts in with my spells, and preferred a commonly found monster part that made spells dual cast, which was absolutely devastating. Elemancy might not appeal to you from the beginning, but getting to know the system and taking advantage of it is extremely helpful later on. Another departure from the usual formula that Final Fantasy XV takes is the way it levels your characters. After each fight, and after each quest is complete, the game gives the 4 characters EXP, but you don't level up automatically. You have to take the party to specific places to rest at night, a motel perhaps, or a camper. The game then tallies the EXP into level ups for the party. Finding the best places to rest at night is a great idea, especially when you have a lot of EXP, because the better your lodgings, the better your EXP modifier. The game also gives you a little slice of life to savor, and it's these little cutscenes that add a lot to the game's overall charm. One of the things that Final Fantasy XV's new engine touts is a graphical upgrade, and it shows. While the original console versions looked great in their own right, the sort of detail on the highest quality in the PC version is ridiculous, and if your PC can handle it, I strongly suggest this as the best way to play. OBS didn't play nicely enough with the game for me to comfortably run it on its highest settings, unfortunately, but even one rank down in quality still made the game shine like a freshly polished gem. In those times when I was simply playing to grind levels or do redundant side quests, I had the game on the highest settings and lamented that I couldn't record smooth gameplay there. Well, that's life. The music, luckily, is great. Typically when I play games, I feel compelled after a while to turn off the background music in order to play my own tunes. This is absolutely not the case here with Final Fantasy XV. Many of the tracks in the game are amazing, from the tune that plays while riding Chocobo to the tense battle music, and I had every reason to keep the music going as I played. As a bonus, you'll find soundtracks to other Final Fantasy games to listen to on those long car rides, a light dose of nostalgia while watching the game's amazing scenery pass by. While the PC version of Final Fantasy XV looks great, sounds great, and plays great, there are a few issues with the game I noticed while playing through it. For starters, the game will often place multiple items in front of you to pick up off the ground. Picking up these items winds up being a chore, as the game will often not let you immediately pick up another item. So you'll often jump in place instead of picking up the item, and since the game removes the option to pick up while jumping, you'll often jump up and down like an idiot while trying to pick things up. This also occurs in front of things you might interact with. It's nitpicky, but since it happens all too often, I figured it was something worth addressing. Fresh off the game's great intro, you'll find yourself stumbling into side quests and hunts. What you'll quickly begin to realize after the honeymoon period is over is that all these quests are fetch quests. You accept the quest, you go somewhere, pick up an item, and bring it back. Usually the game takes your hand for these, and the most the game gives you in terms of challenge is a general area to search for something. Hunts work similarly, except instead of items, you search an area for monsters you've been tasked to kill, and then go back. Worse, every place you can stop at has several side quests and hunts to participate in. You don't necessarily have to participate in these quests, but if you want to smoothly sail through the game and get all the achievements, doing at least some of these is vital to staying at a decent level. These wouldn't be so bad if they tried to keep it interesting, but I could count on one hand the side quests they put real effort into, and one of those was a behemoth fight from the original console demo. Early into the game, after a notable event, Imperials begin to pursue Noctis and his group, and anytime you're outside of towns or outposts, these enemies will arrive on ships and attack you in groups. While you typically get plenty of warning when they arrive, and avoiding them is easy while traveling, if you're in the middle of a big fight and they show up, you usually have to either run or deal with both. You get EXP for beating them, sure, but it's a huge hassle after a while and gets old fast. Having them show up if I stayed in one place for a long period of time would have been okay, but they show up everywhere and seem to grow in level depending on where you are in the map, meaning that they'll always be a challenge to fight. Creating and eating food is an important aspect of the game, and the game is clearly built around this. Fun fact, the developers cooked a large number of the game's meals on a camp stove and rendered them to look as realistic as possible. Sadly, the only time you ever get to look at most of them is if you set camps outside of towns, in which case Ignis gives you a choice of food to make, and that food gives stat bonuses for a duration the next day. You don't get that option when staying pretty much anywhere else. While you can buy and eat food just about everywhere you go that's in civilization, the food you can get there is often underwhelming statistically and fairly expensive. So if you want special meals cooked by Ignis using ingredients that you acquire as you play through the game, you need to seek out campsites and have Ignis cook them. They should have absolutely added the ability to cook, at least when you're still roughing it, like in the game's campers. While not necessarily being part of the actual game experience, one big thing that irked me was the overall universe that the developers tried to make for the game, and their insistence on not just building the universe but rampant product placement, and putting Noctis front and center on everything. Beyond the game, there's a movie, Kingsglaive, an anime, Brotherhood, a VR game, Monsters of the Deep, and a mobile game, A New Empire, as well as numerous other examples of alternative media. Normally I wouldn't mind these sorts of things since they're not typically required, but the game's creator, Hajime Tabata, admitted that those who just played the game would miss context for story events shown in other related media. Meaning, if you didn't digest the alternative media, there would be blanks that you'd be unable to fill in. You can just simply ignore these things and play the game, but if you're the kind of person who loves to get immersed into a game's lore and have all the context, you're completely screwed here. Beyond the borderline necessary additional storytelling, Noctis has been appearing in pretty much everything. While having the most recent Final Fantasy's protagonist appear in a Final Fantasy crossover game makes sense, that is to say the recent fighting game Dissidia NT, he'll also be appearing in Tekken 7 on March 20th. Which is great if you really like Noctis as a character, but otherwise it's another finger pointing towards a turning point in Square Enix's philosophy on leasing their characters out to other companies. Cloud Strife's edition in the Wii U version of Super Smash Bros. Should have been the original red flag signifying this shift. The product placement is also another area of concern in terms of Final Fantasy XV because there's a lot of it. For example, the camping gear used by Noctis and his party are all created by Coleman, a notable outdoor recreation product company. Cup Noodle is far more prominent than any of those, appearing on billboards throughout the game, as an edible meal in the game, and even has a truck in Lestalem, not even that deep into the game, where you buy what you need to make the meal. Gladiolus even unironically states that he loves Cup Noodle, and it's one of his favorite meals in the game. Final Fantasy XV is the first game in a long time that I can strongly recommend to just about anyone that likes RPGs. While the plot lacks a bit, the game looks and sounds amazing and the combat is top notch. Riding on chocobos helps take a lot of the monotony out of short distance travel you'd normally have to be on foot for, and fast travel exists for places you've been already, making it possible to complete what could have been monotonous side quests quickly. Almost everything that I could have had a gripe for in this game was anticipated and addressed by the developers. The thing that really grabbed me about this port is that not only did they put a tremendous amount of effort behind it, it's also much cheaper than anticipated at $50. If it had been just the main game, that might have been pushing it, but the game also comes with all the DLC added to the game in the 2 or so years since its original launch. If you get the Steam version, you also gain access to the items on the Steam Workshop. This includes a Hev suit, Gordon Freeman glasses, and a crowbar from Half-Life. But the rest of the items, which are Cactar themed, aren't especially interesting and I don't recommend using them. While we're on the topic of DLC, I'll be reviewing the DLC in a separate video in the coming months, because I'd be playing and recording this game well into April if I wanted to review everything here, and the runtime in this video would be astronomical. Thanks for traveling with me. You can find me on social media and Twitch, links to which you'll find in the description below. Hope to see you next review.